a hustler. Malcolm became involved in illegal activities, dealing substances, running numbers, and operating in the shadow economy of the ghetto. This wasn't rebellion for rebellion's sake. It was a rational response to systemic exclusion. The legitimate world had told him he couldn't be a lawyer. Fine, he'd be something else. He'd find status, respect, and money in the only economy that would have him. It couldn't last. In January 1946, at age 20, Malcolm was arrested trying to retrieve a stolen watch worth $1,000 from a pawn shop. The sentence was harsh, 8 to 10 years for grand larceny and breaking and entering. He was assigned prisoner number 22,843 at Charlestown Prison. He was 20 years old, angry at the world, and completely certain that his life was over. He was wrong. Prison would become the most transformative period of his life. Initially, Malcolm was known among inmates as Satan because of his loud, aggressive atheism and his hatred of all religion. But prison introduced him to a man named John Bembry, called Bimby, in Malcolm's autobiography. Bembry was self-educated, articulate, commanding respect through the power of his knowledge and speech, rather than physical intimidation. Bembry made Malcolm realize something humiliating. Despite all his street intelligence, Malcolm's actual vocabulary was maybe 200 words. He couldn't express complex thoughts. His letters to family and friends were crude, limited, inadequate. He was intellectually still a child. So Malcolm did something extraordinary. He requested a dictionary from the prison library, and then he began copying it, word by word, definition by definition, punctuation marks included. He started with aardvark and worked his way through the entire alphabet. It took months. His handwriting improved. His vocabulary exploded. Words became tools, weapons, keys to understanding the world. But the dictionary was just the beginning. In 1948, Malcolm was transferred to Norfolk Prison Colony, an experimental facility with a well-stocked library. Here he discovered books, real books, history, philosophy, religion, politics. He read W.E.B. Du Bois and understood the black struggle in America as part of a global pattern of oppression. He read Herodotus and saw how ancient empires justified slavery and conquest. He read Hegel, Kant, and Nietzsche, learning how Western philosophers had constructed hierarchies that placed white Europeans at the top and everyone else beneath them. Malcolm later called Norfolk Prison Colony his alma mater. He said he read more intensively there than he ever could have at any university. He would read until 3 or 4 in the morning, using the dim hallway light after the guards passed by his cell. He joined the prison debating society, honing the public speaking skills that would later make him one of the most electrifying orators in American history. But the most profound transformation came through religion. Malcolm's siblings began writing to him about the Nation of Islam, a black religious movement led by a man named Elijah Muhammad. The nation's theology was unorthodox. It taught that white people were literally devils created by an evil scientist, that black people were the original humans, that separation rather than integration was the answer to racism in America. For Malcolm, sitting in a prison cell because white society had rejected his legitimate aspirations and criminalized his survival strategies, this message made perfect sense. It explained everything: the killing of his father, the destruction of his mother, the burning of his home, his teachers' casual cruelty. The Nation of Islam gave him a framework to understand his suffering, not as personal failure, but as systemic oppression. His conversion was total. He stopped eating pork, gambling, smoking. He adopted a strict moral code. He later said the hardest test he ever faced was the humility required to bend his knees in prayer, noting that before his conversion, his knees had only ever bent to pick a lock. When Malcolm was released on parole in August 1952, he was a different man. He replaced his surname Little, a name given to his ancestors by slaveholders, with an X representing the unknown African name stolen from his family. He visited Elijah Muhammad in Chicago and was quickly appointed an assistant minister. Malcolm X had found his purpose. What happened next was remarkable. Malcolm's charisma, intelligence, and tireless organizing transformed the Nation of Islam from a fringe group of a few hundred members into a national movement. Under his leadership as national representative, membership grew to nearly 40,000 active followers, with perhaps 500,000 more influenced by the movement's message. Malcolm established temples across the country: Detroit, Boston, Philadelphia, and most importantly, Temple No. 7 in Harlem, which became the nation's flagship under his direct leadership. He founded the newspaper Muhammad Speaks, initially printing it in his own basement. He appeared on television programs, debated academics, and became the public face of black nationalism in America. His message was provocative and uncompromising. While Martin Luther King Jr. preached integration and nonviolence, Malcolm preached separation and self-defense. We declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, to be respected as a human being, to be given the rights of a human being in this society, on this earth, in this day, which we intend to bring into existence by any means necessary. That phrase, by any means necessary, terrified white America and thrilled black Americans tired of turning the other cheek. But success brought complications. Malcolm's rising prominence created deep tensions within the Nation of Islam. Older members resented his influence. Elijah Muhammad's family saw him as a threat to their power. Malcolm wanted the nation actively involved in civil rights protests. Muhammad counseled non-engagement with the devil's politics. Then came the devastating personal betrayal. Malcolm discovered that Elijah Muhammad, the man he revered as a prophet, the man who preached strict sexual morality, had fathered children with 6 of his personal secretaries. The hypocrisy shattered Malcolm's faith in his mentor. The final break came in December 1963. President John F. Kennedy had been assassinated. Speaking to reporters, Malcolm said the event was a case of chickens coming home to roost, meaning that the violence America spread around the world through its foreign policy had returned home. The comment outraged the public. Elijah Muhammad used it as a pretext to silence Malcolm for 90 days. But Malcolm knew the silence was permanent. In March 1964, he officially left the Nation of Islam. He founded 2 new organizations, Muslim Mosque, Inc. as a religious entity, and the Organization of Afro-American Unity as a political movement. He was free, and he was in danger. In April 1964, Malcolm embarked on the Hajj, the Islamic pilgrimage to Mecca that every Muslim is required to make if physically and financially able. This wasn't just a religious obligation, it was a confrontation with everything he'd believed for 12 years. When Malcolm arrived at the Jeddah airport on April 12, 1964, Saudi officials seized his passport. They required him to appear before the Hajj court to verify he was a true Muslim, because the Nation of Islam's theology was so far from orthodox Islam that Saudi authorities didn't recognize it as legitimate. Here Malcolm faced a humiliating truth. Despite being a famous minister in America, despite having converted thousands to Islam, he didn't know how to perform the basic Islamic prayer in Arabic. The Nation of Islam hadn't taught the actual practices of global Islam. He was, religiously, still a beginner. He was rescued by Dr. Omar Azam, a tall, powerfully built Egyptian whose father was a high-ranking official. Azam's hospitality and brotherhood challenged everything Malcolm had been taught about white people, because Dr. Azam, by American racial categories, was white, light-skinned, blue-eyed. Yet he treated Malcolm with genuine Islamic brotherhood, securing him a place as a guest of the state and even arranging a meeting with Prince Faisal. Then came the Hajj itself. Malcolm joined millions of Muslims from every nation, every race, every language, all dressed in simple white cloths, all equal before God. He performed the tawaf, circling the Kaaba 7 times with pilgrims whose skin ranged from pale European white to the darkest African black. He ran between the hills of Al-Safa and Al-Marwa, retracing the steps of Hajar, the African mother of Ishmael. He stood on the plain of Arafat with 2 million people, all praying as one. The experience shattered his racial theology. On April 20th, 1964, he wrote a letter that would change the trajectory of his life and work. In his letter from Mecca, he wrote, "There were tens of thousands of pilgrims from all over the world. They were of all colors, from blue-eyed blondes to black-skinned Africans. But we were all participating in the same ritual, displaying a spirit of unity and brotherhood that my experiences in America had led me to believe never could exist between the white and non-white. He continued, "America needs to understand Islam, because this is the one religion that erases from its society the race problem.